Hello, fourth grade. Good to see you guys. Today we're going to go back to adding and subtracting fractions. And so we'll do a little bit of a review, and then we're going to include mixed numbers along with it. You should have paper and pencil in front of you so that you can do the problems along with me. So you remember that a fraction is a part of a whole. So if this white rectangle represents our whole, we could break it into smaller parts like halves, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, and so on. We can also put those parts together to make larger parts. So let's say we had thirds. That's 1/3, right? Now, if we add another third to that, we get 2/3. And you can see that 2/3 is still part of the whole. It just happens to be 2 out of 3. What if, though, we added 2 more thirds? Now the 3/3 created a whole, and we still have 1/3. So the problem we just did was 2/3 plus 2/3, and we're saying that it's equal to 1 1/3. Now, why is that? Well, because 2/3 and 2/3 give you 4/3. 4/3 is the improper fraction. 1 1/3 is the mixed number, but they mean the same thing. So what if we wanted to add 1/8 plus 3/8? Well, let's pull up eighths, and we start with 1. And then we want 3 more. 2, 3, 4. How many eighths is that all together? Well, it's 4/8. Now, 4/8 can be simplified because it is equivalent to 1/2. Now, how do you go from 4/8 to 1/2? We're looking for a common factor for the numerator and the denominator. And a common factor for 4 and 8 would be 4. So we could divide both the numerator and denominator by 4, and we end up with 1/2. So the sum of 1/8 and 3/8 gives us 1/2. So we can also subtract a fraction from a fraction. So let's say we needed to do 6/10 minus 2/10. Well, let's build 6/10 to begin with. So I'm going to get our tenths pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oops, too many. Can I delete one? Let's start again. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There. Now we have 6/10, right? And this time we're going to take away 2/10. So I'm just going to cross out 2 of them, because when we subtract, we take away. So how many are left? Well, you could count that there are 4/10 left. Now, 4/10 is not in simplest form yet. So what common factor do you think we have that we can divide both 4 and 10 by? Well, hopefully you can see that it's 2, because they're both even. That would give us 2/5. Now, 4/10 is equivalent to 2/5. Let me show you how that looks. Let me see if I can get rid of that and get rid of this. And then let's put 4/10 on the board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. And now let's put 2/5. Can we do that? Well, let's do that. Let's look at 4/10 versus 2/5. So I'm going to put 4/10 here, and I'm going to put 2/5 here, and then you can see that they take the same amount of space in our whole, and I can do this like this. They are the same length, and if they are the same length, that means they are equivalent, and we would put an equal sign in between them. Okay? So let's look at adding mixed numbers now. Now, a lot of times mixed numbers are shown in this way, but it's really better to stack them like you would a lot of problems. So when we add, we always start with the smallest place first, right? In this case, the smallest place is the fractional part. So we want to add the fractions first. So 1/6 plus 3/6 would give us 4/6. And then we would go and add the next place over, which happens to be the ones place. 1 plus 3 would give us 4. So we've added, but we always have to stop before we say that we're done with the problem and make sure that our fraction is in simplest form. And if you're on the ball here, you should recognize that 4/6 can be simplified to 2/3. So really the correct answer here would be 4 2/3. I really like it if you put a box around your final answer. That tells me that you've given thought to whether or not it's in its right form. So let's look at this problem. 1 4/5 plus 7 2/5. So our process is always the same. We start with the smallest place, which in this case is the fractional part. 4/5 plus 2/5 would give us 6/5. And then we're going to move over to our whole number, and we have 1 plus 7 gives us 8. Now, again, we got to stop and think. Does this answer make sense? Is it simplest form? Well, you probably have noticed that 6/5 is a fraction that could be rewritten as a mixed number. So really, this is the same now as saying we have 8 6/5. And we could then say instead of 6/5, we could call it 1 1/5, right? Because there are 5/5 in 1, plus 1 more would be 6/5 altogether. So now we need to combine our whole numbers, 8 plus 1, and then the fraction. This is what you would put the box around. That would be your final answer. All right, let's do one more together. And the problem we're going to do is 12 3/4 minus 6 1/4. So in subtraction, we still do the same thing. We start with the fractional part of the problem. And so we have 3/4 minus 1/4, which would give you 2/4. And then we have 12 minus 6, which is 6. And before I put a box around it, I'm going to say to myself, is this the form I want my answer in? And 2/4, we know, can simplify to 1/2. So 6 2/4 is equivalent to 6 1/2. That would be what you put your box around. Okay, so you're going to work on page 307 in your book, and I will have the key attached so that you can check your answers. Now, on the answer key, they give you 2 answers, and they put the word or, but your answer needs to be the simplest form version, okay? All right, let me know if you have any questions. Work hard, you guys. Talk to you later.